This is Spacetime, Series 27, Episode 55, for broadcast on the 6th of May 2024. Coming up on Spacetime, new findings pointing to an Earth-like environment on ancient Mars. Could the colour purple be the new green in the search for alien life? And High Impulse's SR-75 rocket blasts off from South Australia. All that and more coming up on Spacetime.
Welcome to Space Time with Stuart Gary.
A new study using data from NASA's Mars Curiosity rover says there was once an Earth-like environment on ancient Mars. The findings, reported in the Journal of Geophysical Research Planets, points to the discovery of manganese-rich sandstones, which indicate there were once habitable conditions in the red planet-scale crater. Manganese minerals are common in shallow oxic waters found on lake shores on Earth, and scientists think it's remarkable to find such recognizable features on ancient Mars. The claims are based on observations by Curiosity's KenCam instrument, which has identified higher than usual amounts of manganese in lake bed rocks within the crater. These indicate that the sediments were formed either in a river, a delta, or near the shoreline of an ancient lake. The study's lead author, Patrick Gaster from the Los Alamos National Laboratory, says it's difficult for manganese oxide to form on the surface of Mars. Consequently, he didn't expect to find it in such high concentrations on an ancient shoreline deposit. On Earth, these types of deposits happen all the time. That's because of the high oxygen content in the Earth's atmosphere. That's produced by photosynthetic life, and from microbes that help catalyze those manganese oxidation reactions. Of course, on Mars, scientists have no evidence for life, and the mechanism to produce oxygen in Mars's ancient atmosphere remains unclear. So exactly how these manganese oxides were formed and concentrated there is somewhat puzzling. The findings point to larger processes occurring in the Martian atmosphere or in surface water, and shows that more work needs to be done to better understand the oxidation processes taking place on Mars. The KenCam instrument was developed by Los Alamos together with CNES, the French space agency. It uses a laser which fires at some rock particles, turning part of the surface of the rock into a plasma, and it then collects the light from that plasma in order to obtain a spectra which quantifies the elemental composition in those rocks. The sorts of sedimentary rocks explored by the Curiosity rover on Mars have always been a mixture of sands, silts and muds. The sandy rocks are more porous, and groundwater can more easily pass through sands compared to the muds that make up most of the lake bed rocks in Gull Crater. The research team looked at how manganese could have been enriched in these sands, for example, by percolation of groundwater through the sands on the shore of a lake or the mouth of a delta. And they're also looking at what oxidant could be responsible for the precipitation of manganese in these rocks. See, it's really simple. Here on Earth, manganese becomes enriched because of the oxygen in the atmosphere. This process is sped up by the presence of the microbes. Microbes on Earth can use many oxidation states of manganese as an energy source for metabolism. Now, if life was present on Mars, the increased amounts of manganese in these rocks along the lakeshore would have been a helpful energy source for life. What it all means is that the Gull Crater Lake environment, as revealed by these ancient rocks, is providing scientists with a window into what was a habitable environment that, when you think about it, really looks surprisingly similar to many places we see on Earth today. And that's fascinating. This is Space Time. Still to come, could the colour purple be the new green in the search for alien life? And Germany's High Impulse SR-75 rocket blasts off from South Australia. All that and more still to come on Space Time. A new study suggests that life on other planets with different atmospheres and orbiting different types of stars wouldn't necessarily display Earth-like forests of green. The findings, reported in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, hypothesise that purple might be a better signature colour to search for in the hunt for life beyond Earth. Now, that might sound counterintuitive. After all, from houseplants and gardens to fields and forests, green is the colour we most associate with surface life here on Earth, where conditions favour the evolution of organisms that perform oxygen-producing photosynthesis using the green pigment chlorophyll. But an Earth-like planet orbiting another star might look very different, potentially covered by bacteria that receives little or no visible light or oxygen. Now, we actually see that in some environments here on Earth, especially deep underground. And instead, some of these use invisible infrared radiation to power their version of photosynthesis. For example, instead of green, many such bacteria on Earth contain purple pigments. And if they dominated on purple worlds, those planets would produce a distinctive purple light fingerprint, which might be detectable by new next-generation telescopes. The study's lead author, Lucia Fonseca-Cola from Cornell University, says purple bacteria can thrive under a wide range of conditions, and that makes it one of the primary contenders for life that could dominate a variety of different worlds. So, scientists need to create a database for signs of life to make sure telescopes don't miss life if it happens not to look exactly like what we encounter around us here on Earth every day. So far, astronomers have confirmed the existence of more than 5,500 exoplanets, planets that orbit stars other than the Sun. That includes over 30 potential Earth-like planets. Planned observatories such as the Extremely Large Telescope and Habitable Worlds Observatory will explore the chemical makeup of these worlds in their host star's habitable zone. The habitable zone are orbits around stars where temperatures would allow liquid water, essential for life as we know it, to exist on a planet's surface. Using life on Earth as a guide, researchers have started the task of cataloguing the various colours and chemical signatures that a diverse range of organisms and minerals would present in an exoplanet's reflected light. Polo and colleagues collected and grew samples of more than 20 purple sulfur and purple non-sulfur bacteria found in a variety of environments ranging from shallow waters, coasts, marshes, and deep-sea hydrothermal vents. What's collectively referred to as purple bacteria actually have a range of colours, including yellow, orange, brown and red. That's due to the pigments related to those that make tomatoes red and carrots orange. They thrive on low-energy red or infrared light using simpler photosynthesis systems utilising forms of chlorophyll that absorb infrared light and don't make oxygen. They're likely to have been most prevalent early on in Earth's history, long before the advent of plant-type photosynthesis, and they could be especially well suited to planets that orbit cooler spectral-type M red dwarf stars, which just happen to be the most common type of star in the Milky Way galaxy, making up some 75% of all stars in the galaxy. They already thrive on Earth in very specific and unique environments where they don't have to compete with green plants, algae or bacteria. A red sun would give them the most favourable conditions for photosynthesis. After measuring the purple bacteria's biopigments and light signatures, the authors created models of Earth-like planets with varying conditions and cloud cover. Across a range of simulated environments, both wet and dry, they found that purple bacteria actually produced intensely coloured biosignatures. If purple bacteria were thriving on the surface of a frozen Earth, an ocean world, a snowball Earth, or a modern Earth orbiting a cooler star, science now has the tools to search for them. The study's co-author, Lisa Kaltenegger, also from Cornell, says detecting a pale purple dot in another star system would trigger intensive observations of the planet to try to rule out other colour sources, such as colourful minerals. Of course, finding life on another world, even single-celled organisms, would profoundly change our understanding of the universe. Kaltenegger says it would revolutionize our thinking of the age-old question, are we alone in the universe? It would suggest that life must be widespread throughout the cosmos.
We live in an incredible time. We found more than 5,500 worlds that circle other stars. And among those, we found the first couple that actually are at the right distance, so they could have liquid water on the surface like Earth does. And now the question becomes, could some of them actually host life? And what are the signs we need to be able to spot to discover whether we're alone in the universe or not? Of course, first we think about, ooh, green plants, and then blue oceans, and another pale blue dot. But when you go deeper and look at the incredible diversity of life on our planet, there are so many different organisms that could dominate another world.
So this is actually purple cyanobacteria. We use this because purple bacteria, it's a group of organisms that are quite different from the other phototrophs on Earth. It's not only the color that is different, but it's also the type of energy they feed on. They actually do photosynthesis on heat, on the infrared. This means that when they reflect biopigments or reflect biosignatures of these biopigments, those signatures, those fingerprints, will be in different sides of the spectra that usually we are not used to look for.
We don't want to miss signs of life just because we are too narrow-minded and focused just on what we see in our backyard. So each world, including ours and all the planets in our solar system, have its own light fingerprint. And what I mean by that is that the light of the star hits the surface of the planet and also gets filtered through the air of the planet and then reflects and can get caught in my telescope. So what you're really trying to do is decipher the light of a tiny dot and figure out if there's something in it, in this light fingerprint, that tells you that there's biota and life on this world.
So this paper is an idea like, hey, let's not make this even harder by limiting our approach. Let's make sure that we extend our power of observation to all the possibilities and all the range of the spectrum.
We have the hardest time finding life because it is at the edge of technical possibility, even with the biggest telescopes we can currently build. So if we find life on one world, what that means is that it must exist on so many others that we just haven't encountered yet. This is why I am super excited about any life we could find out there, because it just tells you that if we can find one occurrence, it must be everywhere.
And this is Space Time. Still to come, Impulse's SR75 rocket blasts off from South Australia, and later in the Science Report, a new study looks at why people prefer their alcoholic beverages cold. All that and more still to come on Space Time. Germany's Impulse have successfully launched their SR75 sounding rocket on a test flight from Southern Launch's Cunaba test range west of Ceduna on South Australia's west coast. The launch of the Light This Candle mission had been delayed by 3 days due to weather conditions. And a last-minute delay caused by a range violation held up the launch countdown clock for a few more minutes before ignition. Liftoff finally saw the gleaming white missile shoot high off into a clear blue sky on a fiery golden-orange plume. The SR-75 launch vehicle climbed to an altitude of more than 50 kilometers on a suborbital ballistic trajectory before parachuting back to the Earth for recovery downrange. It's only the second launch program from Southern Launch's Cunaba range. The range is designed to test rockets and payloads by launching them into space and then returning them to the Earth for collection and examination, all on the same site. The first launch program at the complex was for Adelaide company DWC Systems back in September 2020. That included a failed launch on September the 15th, followed by 2 successful launches 4 days later, in order to collect data for new CubeSat electronic warfare technology. The SR-75 launch vehicle is a single-stage suborbital rocket. It's designed to carry payloads of up to 250 kilograms to a maximum altitude of around 200 kilometers. The rocket's powered by a unique Hyplock 75 rocket engine, which uses a paraffin wax fuel, non-explosive, until it's combined with its liquid oxygen oxidizer. The SR-75 is part of a test program by Impulse, who are developing a much larger SL-1 orbital launch vehicle using the same basic technology but with 10 Hyplox 75 engines. The 3-stage, 33-meter tall SL-1 should be capable of launching payloads of up to 600 kilograms into low Earth orbit. As for this mission's name, Light This Candle, well, that's obviously a play on the fact it's using a paraffin wax fuel, but it also plays homage to Alan Shepard's famous quote prior to America's first manned spaceflight aboard Freedom 7. That was launched on a Mercury Redstone rocket from Cape Canaveral back on May the 5th, 1961. As well as the Coonabar launch site, Southern Launch are also developing a launch complex at Whalers Way, which is south of Port Lincoln, near the tip of the Eyre Peninsula. That'll specialize in orbital launches over the Southern Ocean. This is Space Time. And time now to take a brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with the Science Report. A new study has found that being vegetarian was linked to a much slower progression of prostate cancer. The findings, reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association, involved a study of over 2,000 men with prostate cancer. It found that those who ate lots of plant foods or went vegetarian or even vegan had a far lower risk of their cancers progressing compared to those who ate the fewest plant foods. Now, while this study cannot prove that eating vegetables, fruits and whole grains were directly affecting the progression of the disease, the authors say the multitude of other benefits from a plant-based diet means men with prostate cancer really should consider swapping out their meat for more veggies. Scientists have found a new way of cleaning up per- and polyfluoroalkyls, the so-called forever chemicals, because they're so hard to remove from the environment once they're there. In fact, these are a major source of environmental contamination. Now, a report in the journal Nature claims scientists have developed a way to break down these chemicals, taking a step towards solving their major pollution challenge. The process uses a combination of treatments which have already shown some limited ability to break down per- and polyfluoroalkyls separately. Now, in real-world scenarios, say like using firefighting foams, the tandem treatments were able to break down the chemical bonds, which is a key step in decontamination. These forever chemicals have been in widespread production since the 1950s, and it's thought every human being on the planet has been contaminated by them. They've also leached into soils and drinking water supplies. They were popular because of their ability to resist heat, water, grease and stains. In fact, over 14,000 different types of chemical combinations have now been developed from these per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They've found their way into products ranging from some types of firefighting foams to non-stick fry pans, carpets, leather and apparel, textiles, paper and packaging, coatings, rubber, food processing and plastics. Okay, I'm a bourbon neat sort of guy, but most whiskey drinkers I know prefer it over rocks. In other words, they like a little ice in it. Now, a report in the journal Matter may have found the reason why people tend to prefer their alcoholic beverages cold. 2 Chinese researchers were having a beer together when they decided to investigate why specific alcohol concentrations were popular in different drinks, especially Chinese whiskey. They found that molecules in alcoholic beverages interacted differently with each other depending on their ethanol concentration. But these different interactions became more similar under different temperatures. For example, they found that in Chinese whiskey with 38 to 42% ethanol content acts differently to 52 to 53% ethanol content at room temperature. But that difference disappears when you warm it up. To prove their point, they say professional alcohol tasters have often reported a stronger ethanol-like taste in their beer when it's chilled, and can only distinguish between different concentrations of Chinese whiskey before it's been warmed. And that means the right temperature could theoretically be used to give a lower ethanol beverage a similar taste to a more desirable, high concentration beverage. Time now for the most ridiculous story of the week. And a popular Russian psychic has put a reputation on the line, claiming the Russian invasion of Ukraine is now in its final phase, and it should be over within a year or so, with what she claims will be a Russian victory. Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics says it's no way to run a war.
According to a leading psychic, they're all leading, by the way.
Leading psychics.
They're all leading psychics. No one says I'm a mediocre psychic. Named Adelina Penina. She's Russian, and she says the turning point, or the beginning of the end, will be at the end of April, which is finished, or May, start of May. So this month, etc. The war in the Ukraine will start to end, and it'll be definitive, and everyone will say yes. And that eventually, and that she adds on that the entire SVO, she says the SVO is what the Kremlin has been referring to as the special military operation, what the rest of the world refers to as an invasion, and that will be completed in 2025, maybe, and that Zelensky will not be captured. He'll leave Ukraine by some means. Quietly and unnoticed, he will escape. So Russia will be successful in its special military operation, and the rest of the world, even our most important opponents, she says, will understand no one will be able to defeat Russia on the battlefield. Now, she's obviously a very patriotic Russian, speaking to Russian media, which doesn't tend to sort of carry a lot of negative vibes.
And of course, we will remember this, and we will be reporting on it in 2025 to see how accurate she was.
I think we can skeptically refer to this as stupid.
That's your scientific evaluation?
That's my scientific evaluation. Put this one in the silly basket.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. And that's the show for now. Spacetime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, Acast, Amazon Music, Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favorite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. Spacetime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the Spacetime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a Spacetime patron, which gives you access to triple episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details. And if you want more Spacetime, please check out our blog, where you'll find all the stuff we couldn't fit in the show, as well as heaps of images, news stories, loads of videos, and things on the web I find interesting or amusing. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.tumblr.com. That's all one word, and that's Tumblr without the E. You can also follow us through @StuartGary on Twitter, @SpaceTimeWithStuartGary on Instagram, through our Spacetime YouTube channel, and on Facebook, just go to facebook.com/SpaceTimeWithStuartGary.
You've been listening to Spacetime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.